Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live with our co-host, Ned Denison.
Hello, everyone. I'm the current chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. My partner in crime is Stephen Munatonis, who's also an honoree of the Hall of Fame. And we have three high-achieving female coaches with us today. We actually don't spend a lot of time talking with coaches and about coaches, so it's about time. And we probably spend even less time acknowledging there are female coaches who have achieved great things in the sport. So first of all, Catherine, raise your hand, former U.S. head coach for the Olympic team and national team. Dr. Vicki Keith, CM, head coach of Southwest Scarborough Variety Village Flames swim team, also an honoree of 𝐃𝐞𝐃. And Kathy Batts, a coach of King Swimmers, one of the very well-respected open water endurance camps in the world. So what I'd like to do is I'd like both Steve and I to start with our experience with female coaches. And I'll start. In Cork, Ireland, we've been lucky enough to have Eilish Burns. She is the first and the only honor coach in the Ireland Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. And she's coached about 20 English Channel soloists. Eilish has never taken a penny from anybody for this work. Her insistence is that the swimmer raise money for charity as part of the entire practice. Eilish is about 5'3", and we're terrified of her. She's also a very good friend. Steve, you had a quite a famous coach in your day.
Yeah, so the two women who actually kicked off my own career in open water was actually 𝐍𝐞𝐃 Rose. That is her married name now, and Penny Lee Dean. 𝐍𝐞𝐃 was actually the coach of Penny. Penny then turned around and became the national team coach, of which I was a member. And both women were, I don't know how to describe it other than tough. They were tough. They had high expectations, and you had to be extraordinarily well prepared. Well prepared meant, what were you going to eat? What were you going to do the morning of the swim? How were you sleeping? How were you remaining flexible? How were you able to handle any kind of, traffic, logistic issues, to how are you going to handle someone throwing down a quick spurt in the middle of the race? We did all kinds of things in Southern California, where both women were from when I first met them in the 1970s. And then, so those two women laid the foundation for everything I've done from that point on.
Fantastic. So what I'd like to do is each lady in turn, we'll start with Catherine, then Vicki, then Kathy. Describe your career paths, how you got into this coaching, and also as your roles changed over the years, tell us about the positive and negative things. So, for example, Catherine, you became a head coach, and probably at that point you were kind of far removed from stroke analysis on some of your swimmers, which you may or may not have loved. Go ahead, Catherine, you start.
Sure. Thank you so much for putting this together. It's nice to see everybody. I think that I sort of fell into open water because I was blessed to coach a really talented athlete. And Steve was kind of part of the beginning of my journey in 2005. I was a young coach. I had swum in college at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Had never swum open water in my life, but found myself coaching at a small club team. And Chip Peterson was 15 and a really great athlete. And I think we just kind of tapped into the love of the sport, and he was really successful. And so it was great to go through a journey with someone else that was learning along the way. And, we were both sort of green and asking a lot of questions. And, that really taught me how important it is to get to know the people that you're around, to understand there are so many people that have a lot of knowledge, and to just kind of follow along with your mentors and ask questions along the way. At the same time, understand your athlete. And that's, for me, the relationship has always been really important in getting to know who I'm coaching, what motivates them. And at times, knowing when to throw the obstacles at them and then knowing when I need to remove them, so that they can be successful. And so I was an assistant coach in 2005 for Team USA. Steve was on that staff, like I mentioned, and Sid Cassidy was there too, but I'm not sure if he was on staff. But again, he was really important for me as far as just knowing someone that, gosh, there's so much I need to learn about this sport. 10K is very different than a 5K, and then a 25K. Wow. And really, it just became a passion of mine, I guess, a hobby. Obviously, my swimmer had some success, and then as a coach, you get more opportunities. In 2008, I moved to the University of Southern California and started coaching with Dave Salo. At that point, I sort of thought my open water career was going to be over. And I was okay with that because it was a great opportunity to work at another really prestigious college swim team. And, I guess I was wrong because I was surrounded by other great athletes, and some saw my interest in open water and really, I guess my passion kind of sparked theirs as well to learn about this sport. It had just been added to the Olympic Games for the 10K. I was fortunate enough to recruit an athlete, Haley Anderson, to USC. She had never done any open water. And she ended up, she's a 3-time Olympian. And so again, relationships are really important to me. And when you coach someone over 12 years, she's very different at 19 than when she's 23. And then most recently, 29 at this past Olympic Games. And the same thing with Osmaluli in 2012. Had obviously a great career in a pool, and sort of thought, well, let's see if you're interested in putting your toes in some cold water or warm water. And that he was successful in London. And so, like I mentioned, this has all been a hobby because in USA Swimming.
Sorry, Catherine, he wasn't just successful in London?
No, he's been successful. I think this was 6 Olympic Games he's been at. So the guy you were coaching won the gold medal in Olympics 10K in London. Yes, and a bronze.
Don't make me drag this stuff out of you now. Come on now.
The athletes are really talented, and I really feel fortunate that I, got a chance to work with them. It is a two-way street, and your athlete has to trust the coach. And so, the thing that I love the most are the travels and the people that I get to meet. And, those are the most important things. My job has always been coaching college. That was my career. That's what I got paid for. And, the travels with open water have really just been an added benefit of a hobby. And, but I have to say, I feel like the reason I have been able to be successful is because I was also focused not just on college recruiting and college swimming, but being able to have something that was a little bit more of a niche. So, it just sort of set me apart. And I really think that as I look back now, I really thrived, knowing that, I had something that I was sort of chasing for my own personal, I don't even know if ego is the right word, but just to know that I was making a difference in something.
Before we pass on to the next one, we will talk about real and perceived glass ceilings for women and coaches. You've recently been kind of the top chair of coaching mafia in the world. Can you just let people know what those positions were? And I think you were the only woman ever to achieve those positions.
I'm possibly, yes. I don't know. I appreciate all the things that you're saying. I feel like I have had these opportunities to be the head of steering committee for USA Swimming with the open water. And, that's sort of been a group that gets a chance to make decisions on a 4-year plan and where our funding goes and what races are going to be the most important, and really just kind of generate conversation. in USA Swimming, relating to open water. And then with FINA, I had an opportunity to be on the coaches committee. And so I was nominated in 2016 and served my role from 2017 to currently. I believe I was the only female on the 8 swimming coaches. So there were 6 from the pool and then 2 from open water. And again, I just really try to not let my gender affect anything. I feel like I'm doing the best job that I can do. And really, I don't think I was aware even until maybe 2012 or 13 when, people, well, you were the first female that did this. I don't know. I just really always want to try to be the best Catherine that I can be. And that's always what my goal has been.
And Ned, I'd like to jump in here too. She glossed over a world champion, a gold medalist, a silver medalist, multiple world championship relay teams and other things. She also mentioned she worked with 𝐍𝐞𝐃, one of the most successful coaches at the world championship Olympic level. And that is Catherine. That's actually Vicki. That's actually Kathy. They're so humble in what they do. Their achievements just roll off the tongue that for the average person, they're like, oh my God, unbelievable. You coached a silver medalist and a gold medalist, male and female. And Catherine said, yeah, I coach WOWSA, and I knew Haley when she was 18. I mean, that's the way these women are. I don't see that necessarily all the time with our male counterparts. Who perhaps like to espouse on their own achievements a little bit louder, definitely louder than Catherine. But I have to also explain a little bit about Catherine's development as a coach in the history of USA Swimming at the international level. In FINA 1991, when FINA introduced the 25K at the World Championships, the US and Australia were top dogs. Of course, there was not there was only the 25K. And we had a good core of American male and female swimmers who were outstanding. And then the US hit a lull I would say late 1998 to 2005 when Catherine and her young athlete, Chip Peterson, came on the scene. And really, 2005 was the turning point of USA Swimming at the international level. Suddenly, Chip Peterson wins the first race he swims in Montreal. Nobody knows this guy. Nobody knows Catherine. Like, who is this guy who outswam and outsprinted Thomas Lures, who at that time had an unbelievable reputation? Even Thomas Lures finishes the race and he's looking at Chip going, who is this guy? Catherine, smiling, happy, high-fiving everybody. It was like she expected. She knew that she needed to be at that level. And that mindset, we need to be at this level. Same thing when Kathy's coaching, her channel swimmers, and Vicki is with her disabled athletes. It's an expectation. They raise the bar really high, and their athletes not only meet it, and they exceed it. And it's so wonderful to hear their own story from their own lips. But I have to say, man, what she did for her athletes and for USA Swimming in general, and that 2005, the current time, the US has been riding that wave. It has a lot to do with Catherine.
Steve, thank you. I will just add one other thing. I'm sure that with Vicki and Kathy as well, whenever there's a challenge kind of thrown at you, we might not talk about it, but at that point when Chip won in 2005, everybody said, well, he can't be good in pool if he's doing open water. You can't balance both of those things. And it's like, I do have to say that was one thing that did kind of inspire me to continue to raise the bar. Is we went to the pool US Open meet, I guess maybe 4 weeks later, and he ended up winning the 1500. And I think at that point I was like, okay, you can do both and you can be really successful in pool and open water. And you don't have to sacrifice anything. And I do feel like that was a bit of a turning point. Now we're starting to see a lot of the men who are winning the gold medal in the 1500 are also competing in open water now. And it is bringing a little bit more excitement to the sport. So, yeah. Thanks.
Vicki, tell us about your coaching career, please.
Well, I started as a competitive swim coach as a teenager, and I was probably one of the only females on the pool deck at that point. I remember one of the first pieces of advice I was given was make all your swimmers refer to you as Ms. Keith, because that's the only way you're going to get respect on a pool deck from the other coaches. I really struggled with that because some of the people I was coaching at that time were also my peers. So I really struggled with that, but I thought I had to follow every piece of advice I was given. And as a more mature coach, I have learned that I don't have to follow advice as given. I should listen to it all, but then follow my heart. I've now been coaching for over 30 years, first as a coach of able-bodied athletes. Then I began coaching athletes with physical disabilities, and then moved to open water swimming, and then back to coaching athletes with physical disabilities. I've coached a number of athletes with disabilities across bodies of water. Carlos Costa was a double leg amputee. He swam across Lake Ontario, which is a 52-kilometer, 32-mile swim. He also did the Strait of Messina in Italy and the Catalina Channel. So he's the first person with a disability to do those. I coached a young woman named 𝐍𝐞𝐝 𝐃𝐞𝐧𝐢𝐬𝐴, who was a quadruple amputee at the elbow, at the knee, all four limbs, and she swam across Lake Erie, and nobody believed that was possible. So, when Catherine was talking about being inspired by people who think something is impossible, I relate to that so completely, because almost everything that I've done in my coaching career has been based on what others perceive as impossible, because I really struggle with that word. I've coached a number of athletes with cerebral palsy across Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And I coached a young able-bodied athlete for the first crossing of Lake Erie butterfly. And then I coached the most challenging of all. I coached my husband.
I get that.
And he completed a 56-kilometer crossing of Lake Ontario, as well as becoming the oldest person to swim Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. So I've done a lot in both worlds. I coach para swimming now. I've coached a number of athletes to world championships. I've coached an athlete to 2 Paralympics, and I love being a coach, but I do see a difference in how men and women coach, and there's obviously it all obviously blends together at some point. But I've spent a lot of time thinking about it because I think that one of the things Catherine spoke about was her intuitiveness and her ability to how important relationships are and things like that. And I think that both genders can do that, but I think that women have been raised and developed to be a little bit stronger in those areas. And so one of the things that I really think is, if we want the best coaching, what we need is partnership coaching. We need to be able to work together with people who are on opposite sides of the spectrum, whether that's male or female or whatever that is, so that the athletes are getting a well-rounded coaching environment.
Ned, can I ask a question? What was the difficulty in coaching your own husband?
Well, he was awesome to coach, but he started as a runner. And anybody that knows swimmers know that runners aren't swimmers, and usually vice versa. So he wasn't really interested in doing any technique work. He felt that he was strong enough to get across the lake. So about 3 miles before completion, he had such a bad rotator cuff injury that he had a triangular bruise in his bicep and could no longer swim. And he still could have finished the swim if we had a second stroke, but he hadn't deemed that important either. So at that point, he realized that maybe there was more information he could benefit from. And he allowed me to take him right back to floating. We went back to floating, and because he was told he was going to have surgery on his shoulder to heal it. And he decided to go with rest. And we went back to floating. We went back to the first movement and every movement after that, breaking it down one step at a time. So within a couple of years, his stroke had improved significantly. Within 5 years, he had swum the longest single crossing of Lake Ontario. But it was just understanding that it wasn't as simple as swimming across the lake, but there's a lot of small pieces to that, and that he had to listen and respect my knowledge. And it wasn't that he always respected me. He always respected my knowledge. He just didn't see the value in it. And I think that sometimes is our challenge, is we need to see value in what each coach offers. And I think that that's really important. And I think that we miss that. Even if we have a coach who's a little idiosyncratic, our tendency is, well, they're different, let's avoid. And I think that we saw some of that at the Olympics as well. And it's like, we need to learn from everybody, work together, and create a well-rounded environment for our athletes.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting was, and I'd like you to explain it, and Catherine mentioned it a little bit. A coach, we often see they're in the escort boat or they're on shore and they congratulate their athlete after a great swim or a magnificent crossing. But it's really that the other 364 days of the year that you're with the athletes, there's no cameras, there's no anybody. I think that's the harder part. I think that the day of the event or the day of the crossing, that's a challenge. But when you're coaching your husband and you're also returning home with that same athlete, that must be a challenge, isn't it?
Maybe there are days they didn't return home, Steve.
Oh, no, we always returned home with a smile. I must say, I coached my husband differently than I coached any other athlete. I did not demand things of my husband. And nor did I need to, because he was self-motivated and an adult. And I find that you can inspire athletes without demanding things of them. And I actually think that that's a much healthier way to look at it. If you can create an environment where they want something so badly that you don't have to force them to do something, I think that that's where the value is in coaching. I have coached athletes where I was just their coach, beside them in the open water swim, and never having met them before. And that's a different type of challenge, but it's an awful lot of fun. But coaching an athlete 365 days a year is the joy, right? It's breaking things down into small pieces. It's getting to know them. It's the mental focus. It's the mental imagery. It's the conversation about how do you talk to the media, because I took that as part of my coaching also. And it's like, if I'm going to represent you as your coach, I need you to be able to have a conversation that is positive and respectful. And so these are things that you can do. If somebody asks this question, you're not comfortable with it, you can always answer a different question. But whatever you say should be in a positive light and show support for the people around you and be respectful. So we had all sorts of conversations.
It's actually interesting. You mentioned that there's been several high-profile professional male athletes who have destroyed their career on a bad interview. Kathy, let's go to you. You've got a different group of people you're coaching for a different challenge. So by all means, talk to us about some of those differences.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you both for organising this, and listening to Catherine and Vicki. My goodness, they're pretty incredible ladies. Mine is slightly different in respect of, like both of you ladies, I started off in the 1970s as a swimmer, back in the day when nutrition was considered to be a piece of chicken, a cup of coffee, half a Mars bar. And so now, where we are now, the nutrition is so different. What I swam on then is not what we swim on now. And I also find that some of the athletes, it doesn't suit them. The nutrition, the modern nutrition that we've got doesn't suit them. So it's very much an experiment. And I've even found some of the swimmers have gone back to what I used to have as a teenager because it just suits their body. I think the important thing for me is one size doesn't fit all. So we might be coaching a group of 12 to 20 people, but they're all treated as individuals because we might have swimmers at different stages of training, some that can only do half an hour and then they come back the next week and they do 45 minutes because the water temperature is so cold. Others that have just started to taper down for an event. So we very much gear the training up that we train 12 to 20 individuals rather than we say, right, everyone get in now, you're going to do a 6-hour swim and then come out again. We try and look at stroke analysis, and again, looking what we used to swim in the 70s, how I used to swim is so different now. You know, techniques are moved on, and it's quite difficult sometimes to change in that respect. I think the other slight advantage I've got over my male counterparts is being a mum. And if I have teenagers, I seem to be able to relate and deal with the teenagers better than my male opposite partners. And I understand it. And I think there's this balance that, you know, if they're having, no, I can't do this, I won't do this, I think I can deal with it better than my male colleagues. And I purely think it's because I'm a mum and I've been there. And I also, the other thing is I'm a great believer in, I won't get you to do anything that I'm not prepared to do myself. I might be doing it slower than you, but I can do that.
And Kathy, do you find you also discover teenagers in men over the age of 40?
Yes, yeah, very much so. And sometimes I'll say something and they don't like it, and then they might go to a male coach, and luckily they might say the same thing. And sometimes I think, rightly or wrongly, the men might feel a tiny bit threatened, and there's no need for that, you know, whatsoever. Safety is absolute paramount, and I would never ever say to a swimmer, no, you are doing that and you will continue to do that. And it's just working with individuals and looking at their potential and what they can do. I find the pleasure I get from coaching is completely different to the pleasure when I've just finished an event and thought, I've done it, I've actually done this. But to see someone else do it on the back of, I've said, well, if you could do this, and I want you to think about your stroke, and let's sort your feeding out, and it's a success story, the pleasure is off the scale.
This is a question for Kathy and Vicki. Have you coached a swimmer for those 364 days of the year, and then on the day of their crossing or their swim, you are not on their boat? And in those cases, do you feel any increased anxiety?
I'll start, Kathy. If I'm with my athlete throughout everything else, I'm there on the day of. I can't imagine not being there. I would sign myself out of a hospital and show up with a cast on my leg if I had to. If you've worked that closely with an athlete, you have to be there for the event.
Yes, I tend to agree with you. I've had one situation during this year that one of our swimmers was swimming the Bristol Channel, and there was just no opportunity. I could not get on the boat with them, but her husband was on there. So we had phone link all the time. So we would regularly talk to each other. I would regularly know what was happening in the water. And then at the last stage, I actually changed her feeding plan by talking to her husband. He was describing what was happening. And I think it's so important that we know our swimmers' moods. We know what they swim hard on, what doesn't agree with them. And I think the initial few months is a big learning curve. And then once you get to know them extremely well, and it's easier to work with them.
Yeah.
Kathy, let's start with you with this. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on sort of like the difference with, coaching the 10K on the national teams. You're not always selected as a coach to be able to travel with the team and train your athlete. And so I guess it's interesting to hear your perspectives. As a coach, you 100% want to be there on the day of the event. We don't always get that opportunity. And I do remember in 2017, this is probably a situation I should have handled better, but I was not selected to be on the staff. And I had 2 athletes on the team, and I was really upset. And I thought, how am I not selected? And even though I had been on for the last 10 years, it's like, I didn't necessarily agree with USA Swimming's decision, but I did have to support my athletes. And it is really hard to not be there, and you have to send practices. And then at the end of the day, I think the biggest lesson that I've taken from all of this is empower my athletes to be able to be successful if I'm there or not, because there's going to be chances that I'm not there, and I need them to believe in themselves and to know that I've done everything I can in my power to get them to that point. And then they have, ultimately they're going to do it because it's their goals, their training, they're motivated. And so that's just kind of a different experience. So there were 2 years that I wasn't there, and that was hard.
And I want to do a follow-up question there. In Kathy's case and Vicki's case, they're on an escort boat right next to their swimmer. They see everything. They understand the atmosphere on the boat, the mindset of the swimmer, the conditions, the temperature, etc. Catherine, you're often on a feeding station, and you see your athletes for 2 seconds, maybe
yell
3,
at them.
and then all of a sudden you don't see them for the next loop. What's going through your mind when they're completely out of your, often your vision?
Yes, the people that know me, I'm a pacer, so I just don't really like to stand still. And I think that is why the relationship with your athlete is so important. Talking about different scenarios, talking about game plan prior to a race or prior to an event, and ultimately after every opportunity to race, it's the conversation that happens afterwards. And that's where the learning happens, whether it's, they have to take the ownership of like, I should have made this decision in this moment. And, with more experience that I have as a coach, I can ask better questions and I can help prepare them based on what I've seen and what I know of the field. And I think that's another thing that's a value is having people that understand the sport and understand who you're racing, because you're not racing a clock. You're trying to get your hand on the finish pad before anybody else. And so certainly it's interesting. And yeah, we have to have a feeding plan. I remember one race, I told Haley where I was going to be on the feeding pontoon. And, we said, well, let's try this time. So I was right where we said. Well, she comes by the first feed, goes flying by me, and heads to the other side of the dock. And then looked back like with this face that I could tell through her goggles, like, oh, she is pissed. And all the other coaches like, ooh, Catherine, you are going to get it. I'm like, I am supposed to be here. This is what we talked about. So after the race, she comes up to me and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. She said, you were right. So, those are the things that we kind of laugh about, and stuff's going to happen. The athletes have to make decisions on the spot, and I have to do my job to prepare them to do that without me.
I think Kathy had something she wanted to add. I think Kathy had something she wanted to add.
What I was going to say, I think for all of us, COVID has changed how we coach. And certainly within the UK, The problem that we have is that Scotland, England, Ireland and Wales are not singing from the same song sheet. So I have had swimmers in those respective countries who cannot travel further from their home, and we go weeks without seeing them. So we've had to set up training where we talk to them on the telephone, we do Zoom calls, we set a training plan, we ask their respective partners to video them if they can get to open water. So we've had to change, and I'm sure all of you have, considerably. So that has been a big learning curve during COVID. How do you coach a swimmer that's still got to swim, but that you can't physically see them?
Yeah, Kathy, let me have you start, Kathy, and make this very quick. Did you have any female coaching mentors, and have you mentored other female coaches?
Okay. When I was training, I had Frida Streeter, MBE, and I have the biggest amount of respect for her. Up until then, I'd had nothing but male swimmers, and Frida just had a look. You know, that if you didn't do very well, she just had that look, and she looked at you and thought, oh, I've done very well today. But she was a fantastic role model, really respected by all the swimmers, and I appreciate everything she did for me, along with all the other male coaches. But no, there doesn't seem to be many females coming through, and I'm not sure if it's because they've still got young families or they've got work commitments, but no, there isn't many females coming through.
Vicki?
I have had the opportunity to mentor a number of female coaches. That's something new that Canada is doing right now. So that's been a really great opportunity. When I look back to being mentored, I think my mother started it by the book she encouraged me to read. And the two people that I think framed my life and helped me frame around their lives was Florence Nightingale, the woman who invented nursing, and Helen Keller, who became an incredible human being and philanthropist and just a huge giving person despite her challenges. And I remember as a young person having my mother read those books to me over and over and over again. So even when I was facing the challenges of people seeing me as less because I was female, I had this internal belief that there was something really strong and positive about women because I had been raised with those two people as my role models. You know, and I don't think my mother realized what an incredible gift she was giving me during that time, because I still have the books.
Both of those are much better stories than I have. Most of my coaches were males. I just loved training. I loved swimming. I studied psychology and education in school. And for me, I think that was the most important thing. And I have a really strong mom. And so I can't say that there was one female that really set the path for me to follow. I, again, just really felt like I had value as myself and how I showed up on the deck. And I try to be more aware of that, of what I can control. And, you know, I can control my effort, I control my attitude. And I just try to bring out the best in others. You know, spending more time, I think with open water, there are a lot of female coaches actually internationally. So, you know, I would watch the Russians and there would be, you know, Russian female coaches. And we didn't really get to share any information because the lack of language barrier. But, you know, I saw them getting the job done. And it's just like, why should I be any different? And then I do think I've become a better coach because I'm a mom, and, you know, just understanding and trusting your intuition, and then having the ability to kind of look at a lot of different with a lot of different things going on in the pool, whether it's practice or competition, and just being able to understand that you do have to wear a lot of different hats. And I think that's an important thing to note. I've always looked up to other female pool coaches like Cindy Gallagher and Terry McKeever and Carol Capitani at Texas. And, those women I will definitely reach out to if I have a question. And a lot of times if I'm having a hard day with one of my female athletes, the females tend to be harder at times. The men will just do what I tell them to do. The women kind of have to, manipulate situations at times. But, I can call them and say, what would you do in this situation? And then I have to think like, is this what I would do? Right. So taking the information from other people, taking advice, and then figuring out like, how am I going to, respond?
So Vicki, for you, tell us about in the last 30 years of your coaching career, are there things now possible for a female coach, positions that they can apply to, roles they can do that didn't exist before? Are some of the glass ceilings breaking?
Absolutely. I think that even now I'm more welcomed on a pool deck, but I do still think that there are challenges. I was selected in Canada. We have the Canada Games, which is a huge deal. I was the first female swim coach ever selected to be a head coach for that. I was also the first para coach to be selected. So that was kind of exciting. And so I'd be standing there beside all the male coaches that had been selected as my assistant coaches. And throughout that entire meet, that 5-day meet, not once did the officials come to speak to me about a challenge or an issue with the team. They always went to one of the male coaches. So men are still perceived as the leaders. And this is something that we have to work together and understand. But I mean, like if you hear a doctor, the first thing that comes to your mind is a man. If you hear nurse, the first thing that comes to your mind is woman. We still have to work through a number of things to create a balanced playing field. But I think that we're at a point right now where we're identifying that there are a number of different coaching styles and that there's value in each of those. And I think that that's a really good place to be as long as we continue to move forward.
Kathy?
I agree entirely. I do think the males are still dominant, but I would like to see that we get recognized for being a really good coach, the best coach, rather than being, oh, that's a female coach. I hope I've put that correctly. I'd rather be recognized as being a good coach rather than a female coach.
And Catherine, you've broken some of those barriers. Are there some we haven't spoken about yet? If you were to apply for a head coaching job at a prestigious U.S. university today versus 15 years ago, do you think it would be different?
I think we're still. I hate to say, but I do still think there are challenges for hiring females in a college university setting, and especially for coaching a combined team of men and women. I think the assumption is if you have a female team, you need a female head coach. And, I don't see that there's any difference. I think that women bring a really unique value. And just like what Kathy said, I always want to be honored to be the best coach. I don't want to have, the adjective I'm a female. And I have been asked, like, if you're a team with staff going out to dinner, it's like, oh, are you the therapist? Are you the massage therapist? Like, no, I'm the head coach. So it's always kind of fun to do that. But I agree. I still think there are some ways to go. And again, I just think I love this idea of being collaborative and understanding different coaches bring different strengths. And that is the best way to, have success is by capitalizing on people's strengths and not letting ego get in the way.
I'm pretty sure Frida Streeter killed a couple people along the way that made those mistakes about, are you the massage therapist? I'm pretty sure she just physically killed a couple people.
Yeah, I think so.
Love you, Frida, if you're listening. I love you. So I mean it nicely. And so now look in the crystal ball. Look at the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What's going to change for this sport and female coaches? What's going to change in the next 5, 10, 20 years? Vicki?
I don't know. I think we're on a trajectory that we're going to be able to follow through with. I feel more listened to and respected now than I did 20 years ago. I like to think that part of that is because I have more information and that I have more things to share. But I hope that we can move towards collaborative coaching. I think that team coaching is the way, and I think we need also not just to look at female and male, because we're in a brand new world where we have multiple genders, for lack of a better term, and we need to be partnering people up not by gender but by personality or by focus, so that we have complementary coaching, and the athletes are getting everything that they need.
Catherine?
No, I'm not quite sure. I do feel at times when women are in a competitive environment, they're not as eager to share. And I found that more on the college side of things, that if you're competing against another team, the women are not always, I guess you don't always feel as supported. And I do think that women need to boost each other up a little bit more, be more cheerleaders. And for me now, stepping away from the pool deck and away from coaching, I love that I can share my insight, my experience with other women and men. I mean, anybody actually that's interested in talking. I really think that finding a way to have more mentor programs, in the United States, John Urbanchek is also one of my most special people that has impacted my life. And I just think being able to close the gaps between some really successful coaches and then young ones coming up, if we can really find avenues that people can talk and share and really be open to learning, I think that's important. And not just talking, but experiencing the pool deck together and seeing how people show up. And so I don't know what the future looks like, but I'm confident.
Kathy?
I think Catherine and Vicki have made some very valued points. I do think we do need to get some sort of mentor program together. What concerns me is I'm not going to be able to keep going for the next 20, 25 years to how I am now because of my age. And we're not getting the younger ones coming through that we're passing our knowledge and our experience onto. And I don't want to be one of these coaches in 20 years' time that I'm having to sit in a chair and coach on the side because physically I've passed it. But I do want to see younger people coming through, be it male or female. And I do think there is a forum for us to get together and share experiences. And for me, I think some coaches don't like talking to each other because they're slightly concerned that you're going to take their ideas or use their ideas or maybe take some of their swimmers away. And I don't want to see that. I want us to work together so that we have got younger people coming through.
Steve, any final questions for the ladies?
Yes. Kathy mentioned the 1970s when she was coming up as a competitive swimmer. And, in the 1970s, if you were a coach, generally you wrote a book. It could be Doc Counselman writing The Science of Swimming, or you appeared at an annual coaches conference and gave a keynote speech. That's how they established their reputation, in addition to coaching their athletes. But nowadays, we have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have TikTok, we have all these other means to establishing a reputation. Going forward, my generation, you read a book, hardcover or softcover, you just read a book and you absorb that information from the coach or this well-known swimmer. Now, I go to the pool deck, I go to the beach, and everybody's looking at their phone, swiping left, swiping right, swiping up, swiping down. And, they are attracted to those individuals, athletes, or coaches who have a big following. So going forward, how does social media play in your role within the swimming community? That's a question to everybody.
Who wants to go first?
Probably Catherine, because she's dealing with those 18 to or 17 to 23-year-olds.
It has really changed in the last, I'd say, 5 years. Honestly, I just think kids are so used to immediate gratification now. Everything is on your phone and it's immediate, and people are not as patient to buy into a process or to take time to go have coffee. Like, they just rather text you. And I think the days are gone of that. And I have an 11-year-old. I'm worried, like, how do I teach her how to manage this? Because it's clearly here to stay. And I have to say, I get a lot of great ideas from Instagram. So I follow some really great coaches, and I love seeing what people are doing. I'm generally not a giant poster on that type of thing. So I avoid that, but I do like seeing and learning, and I don't know. I don't have any answers for you.
Vicki?
I'm pretty much in the same boat. I don't spend a lot of time on social media. I am a part of a lot of groups so that I can see what other coaches are doing and glean knowledge from them. I like to post and share perspectives, but I don't communicate with my athletes through social media, partly because of their ages. So it's not a part of my coaching tools at this point.
At the same time, Vicki, you're one of the honorees that has one of the best TED Talks. It's a bit dated now, but it's still it's one of my most memorable TED Talks. No, it's one of my most memorable TED Talks, and you put out a reasonably consistent message on Facebook, which has lessons in them.
And that's what I try and do. If I'm using social media, my Facebook page is almost exclusively messages to live by. I spent a lot of time in the last year talking about my husband who passed away, and sharing those experiences, because what I'm finding is, especially during times of COVID, is people are alone and they need to feel, they need to know they're not alone. And so that's what my goal has been over the last 2 years, is to share messages so people don't feel alone.
Mm.
And Kathy?
I think the social media part of things, for me, is challenging, because it's developing all the time. And I must admit, I do have to rely sometimes on my son or my daughter to say, how do I do this? Or what's the best way of approaching this? Because they've been brought up on social media, whereas my generation hasn't. Yes, it is the way forward, but I still think there's a forum for us to get together physically rather than do things via Zoom and via emails and things like that. And I hope those days will return once COVID eases off a little bit.
I'd like to thank you all. We've probably reached about the end of our time. I know one thing for sure, that the sport is built on the shoulders of people who have been successful, people who are positive, and people who bring a lot of class to the sport. And you three certainly fit in that group. So thank you very much. You will be the inspiration for this next group. Let's find those young coaches, male or female. Let's get some of the knowledge sucked out of your brains into their heads, and we'll all be much better off. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
So much.
Thank you.